What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Natty News Daily podcast. We've got a very special guest, another female guest on the podcast. We're doing our best, guys. We hear you. We need more female representation. We're doing our best. And thankfully, Loz all the way across in the UK right now. What time is it for you? It's like noon?
Yeah, it's noon.
Yeah, nice midday chat with the Natty News crew, bright and early in the morning for us. Welcome to the podcast, Loz.
Oh no, thank you so much for having me on. As I just said off air before we started recording, it's a huge honor for me to be on today, and I really appreciate you giving me a voice and giving me the ability to speak on this platform. So thank you, and I can't wait for the podcast that we've got coming today.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So, for those that don't know who you are, I'm sure a lot of people tuning in just with, sharing this through your network and AJ's network and the NBW network. A lot of the
Mhm.
viewers are probably going to tune in to watch you, but we're going to have some new eyes, and new listeners for this episode. So, can you give a bit of a background of, your history in bodybuilding? I know you started in bikini and have worked your way up, and you're a very high profile coach now, and especially in the female space, which is awesome to see. So, quick little synopsis, who you are, what you're all about.
Yeah, of course. I'll obviously try and keep it as brief as I possibly can do. So I've been as you can say, like bodybuilding. I know we all say, oh, now I started properly bodybuilding at this time, but I started getting into bodybuilding in 2017. So at the time I was 16. And that was when I got into training. And for me, when I found training in bodybuilding, it was a purpose driven pursuit. It was never really anything to do with the physique. It was never about wanting to look a certain way without going like super deep in on it. I struggled a lot as a young girl with my body image. I struggled a lot with disordered eating when I was younger and just like purpose, I think, over anything else. And
Yeah,
for me, getting into training, it was very much about trying to better myself in healthy ways and in sustainable ways where I look towards being the best version of myself rather than diminishing myself.
yeah,
And that was how I just very naturally fell in love with training. And it was something that I was very insecure with to begin with. But over time, I just built more and more confidence. And very naturally, it led me down the route of bodybuilding. Like I always just loved weight training. Like straight away, that was where I wanted to be. And I'd always been a bit of a tomboy growing up. I don't really know if that's like a Canadian
yeah. I
phrase,
got you.
but
I got you.
I was always kind of like more inclined that way. I wanted to do what the boys were doing. I never wanted to be told you can't do that because you're a girl. And it used to be one of the most irritating things ever when you when you'd hear that as a young girl. So I was always kind of very determined to just kind of go down that path and prove that I could do what others are doing, maybe not be quite as strong, but I can try my best. And I naturally just kind of fell more and more in love with just the training aspect. Like it was never ever a case of, oh, I really want to compete. I really want to do this. I didn't know anything about competing. I just enjoyed training. But eventually having a bit of a competitive edge and wanting to go down that natural route of self-progression, I decided that I was going to give it a go. And I decided to compete for the first time in 2020. So as you rightly said, I competed in the figure division. I did not competed in bikini to begin with. I wanted to compete in figure, but again, this was where I didn't know a lot about the sport, so I didn't know anything about natural bodybuilding. I didn't know anything. The only thing that I knew about natural bodybuilding briefly was from AJ training at the gym that I trained at. I knew that he was a natural competitor, but honestly, the narrative was like he's just one of those like weird natties, like, natty bodybuilding's a bit weird. And
Yeah,
that was about it. And especially for females, what I searched when I was trying to find out more about competing, I didn't see a single natural competitor.
yeah,
Like it's like this is the IFBB. You compete for an IFBB pro card. Like all the girls we want IFBB pro cards want to be bikini pros. This is where you go.
yeah.
And also, obviously, if you're not big enough to be doing figure on the assisted side of the sport, you look towards bikini. So that was kind of where I just went, right, okay, this is just
This
where
is
I
where I
go.
go. Yep.
Yeah, I think, even if I did compete in natural federations at the time, I probably still would have been in bikini. And I know we'll probably get into some discussions later down the line in terms of what actually lands you in a specific category as a female. It's not always just muscularity anyway. But that was where I competed. I competed in a non-tested, like literally the NPC in the UK. I loved the prep. I loved the experience. It was one of the most amazing things I'd done up until that point. but bikini just wasn't something that felt right for me. And also that show that I did, I don't know if you know much about Two Bros and the NPC in the UK, but the shows aren't great. Let's put it that way. It was also in COVID, which doesn't help. But like the actual experience of the show day was very underwhelming, and I was kind of like, oh, like do I even do I
It's
even
kind of
really like
shit.
enjoy? Yeah, I was like, I've loved the prep, but like this was just a bit like dead, to be honest. And I came away from it and I was like, look, I still love bodybuilding though, so I want to keep moving forwards. The people that were surrounding me in the sport at that time were AJ from we weren't together, but he was a very close friend. Kuba was my coach, so Kuba Chelin and his wife Meg. She's like my best friend, and we trained together throughout that prep. So that was kind of how I met AJ because AJ was training with Kuba, and I was training with Meg, and I was coached by Kuba. So I came away from that prep, and I was like, I want to move away from bikini, but I was at a bit of a crossroads because I didn't really know where I wanted to go, to be honest. And I wasn't naive in the sense that I understood if you want to go to figure and you probably want to go down the NPC side of the sport, like unless you've got incredible genetics, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to do that naturally.
Mhm.
And I did not want to go assisted, just personal preference. I was like, I don't want to do that. But I didn't know that there were other opportunities. And honestly, this is where everything fell into my lap at kind of a perfect time, because that's when I actually started seeing AJ and I went with him to the UK FBA finals that year. I went to the INBA Europeans, I believe it was in Italy. And that was the first ever natural show that I'd been to. And I was like, whoa, like this is actually pretty
Yeah.
cool. Like I've never seen any of this before. I saw the girls on stage, I saw the guys on stage as well. I was like, this is awesome. Like I didn't even know that these opportunities existed. Obviously, albeit me maybe being in a little bit of a nutshell, in like a closed environment at the time, but I was able to really open up my perspective to what was possible. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna focus on this now. And as I say, all these things kind of fell in alignment. And I also started coaching, as you say. I started coaching in 2019, 2020 when I was actually still at university at the time. So I spent the next few years leading on from there, building up my coaching business whilst I was still at university
Mhm.
throughout my last off season. Started putting competitive clients on stage in 2022. So I've been doing that for the past few years now, very naturally going down that path of wanting to help others because genuinely bodybuilding was something for me that just completely changed my life. Like it gave me, as I say, that purpose,
Yeah.
and realized what was possible. And I genuinely have such a deep passion for wanting to show others what is possible, particularly on the natural side of the sport as females. Like we can do some really cool stuff.
For sure.
So I've been very much dedicated to that over like the past 5 years up until where I'm at now, where I'm very fortunate to coach a wide range of females and males as well. I actually had my first male competitor on stage this year too, which was exciting.
Yeah, he
So
looks sick, by the way.
that's Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was really, really fun. And I was very grateful to him for putting his trust in me as well, because I totally appreciate that as a male athlete, putting your trust in a female, as much as it shouldn't be that way, like I get that you might think, does she really know what she's doing? Like, especially because I'm still relatively young in the grand scheme of things. That meant a lot to me. I had an incredible time prepping and coaching him. And that's led me to obviously where I'm at now as a coach and athlete, where I did end up competing last year. So I did make that jump up to figure. I also did a little bit of a BMBF appearance in bodybuilding, so they allow you to do a crossover. So that was super fun. And that whole season for me was showing what was kind of possible with taking a good period of time, not
Yeah.
being afraid to get uncomfortable and not setting limits on yourself, really. Not to show, oh, you can win all these shows, you can do this and that. Here I am in my first season. And that's not my goal with bodybuilding, because we all have a different set of genetics. It doesn't matter. It's about the progress that you can make, and it's about the potential that you can make regardless of what you're dealt with. And that's kind of what I want to continually show with every single year that passes. So that last showing on stage last year was kind of a summation of that, showing this has been what these first 4 years have looked like so far. We'll keep moving forwards from here. And that was really good fun. It was an interesting prep because I was not meant to prep last year. So it was a pretty big one. But it was still good fun nevertheless. And now I'm just kind of embarking on this next off season and this next phase in my
Yeah.
journey of moving forwards. I apologize. I said that was going to be brief, and I probably didn't keep it too brief.
I'm gonna
I,
put Loz news above this
yeah, I was gonna say that
just
was
to get
enough
a
credit in
crack.
itself. It was great though. I
Yeah,
Oh,
that
want to
was
start.
congrats.
perfect.
Yeah, I want to circle back to something you said because I think you touched on like a big theme that I've seen with a lot of female competitors, right? Because social media is so vastly dominated by the enhanced side of the sport, when a
Mhm.
female starts to see it, all they see is feasible as bikini, right? Because
Yeah.
the differences in muscularity, especially on the enhanced side between the categories, is crazy different.
Yeah.
But as you know, and we know, the natural side of the sport, not as much. And I think the statement you said was the amount of muscularity doesn't necessarily dictate your division in the natural side. So I want you to
Yeah.
try kind of like expand on that a little bit. Explain that for us.
Yeah, it is very, very interesting. And if I'm honest, the more time that I spend in the sport and going to as many shows as I can do, because this is something that I make a big mission for myself. And despite maybe only have been coaching for the past 5 years, I've been to so many shows in that time. It's why myself and AJ try and go to worlds every year and all the different championships, as many shows as we can do in the UK, is to gain as much of an understanding as I can do about the different divisions and how they're constantly changing as well.
Yeah.
I think for females, it's really hard. And to be honest, I even find this difficult myself. And I say to AJ sometimes, you're so lucky. I wish that it was just like bodybuilding for women and we just had like lightweight and height classes or whatever it is. And it's simple, but obviously not everyone wants to do that. But it can be really difficult because there are so many categories and it changes so much from federation to federation. I think in some ways, the NPC kind of makes it easy because they are very consistent with the way that they judge between, obviously now we have fit model, but between like bikini, figure, physique, like it's pretty clear cut. And the size differential is quite substantial between the divisions. On the natural side of the sport, it fluctuates a lot between different federations. So if we just firstly look from a natural side of things, we have, again, usually the same categories. We have bikini, figure, physique, fit body, Miss Athletic. It changes depending on what federation you're looking at. And then we have bodybuilding, right? But what I notice is that what they're looking for in those divisions changes a lot from federation to federation. Particularly here within the UK, what I see with what they go for with bikini from the UK FBA to the WNBF can change a lot. And then I go to Worlds, and then what they're looking for again at Worlds is very different to what they're looking for in the UK with the amount of muscularity and the conditioning, specifically conditioning as well within these different divisions. And that can make it a little bit difficult. So I think that's where you have to kind of just understand what federation it is that you are competing with when you're trying to meet that criteria. And it's why for me as a coach, it's important that I go to those shows so that I can try and help my clients to land where they need to be as best as possible. Now, when it then also comes with the differences between the categories and the muscularity and conditioning requirements, this is where I've actually seen things change a bit over the past few years. So most people will always think bikini is the lowest muscularity and the least conditioned. Obviously, bodybuilding is the most. Now, bodybuilding is pretty much always the same. Physique, you find the same. But I have seen a bit of a difference with figure and bikini recently, where a lot of the bikini girls are actually very muscular. The muscularity I've seen has increased quite a lot, and the conditioning, especially here in the UK, has been wild. Like a lot of these girls have got almost like striated glutes, and they're often a lot leaner than some of the figure girls. Which from my opinion as a coach, I kind of want to see a bit more clear definition of where that line draws from a judging standpoint with what they're actually rewarding or not, because I think that can make things a bit difficult. But I think above all else, honestly, it's structure. It's structure over anything. Obviously, you have outliers who are very clearly too muscular for certain divisions or too small for certain divisions. But particularly with those first three initial ones, and especially that wellness as well, for example, which is being introduced now, I think that it is very much structure, it's insertions, it's muscle bellies, it's what kind of, like we all know, like we can all get into different levels of conditioning as well based on like genetic set points and things like that too. So when you're looking at categories like figure, it's like, do you have wide clavicles? Do you have like sweeping
Yeah.
quads or don't you? And like this was a big thing for me last year where yeah, I can have more muscle on my frame, obviously, but I am always going to be very limited by being very narrow and being very short. So I even asked a lot of judges, like even if I put on a lot of muscle, will that make me more competitive? And the honest answer was no. Like
Yeah.
you'll be bigger, but even if a girl steps on stage with you and she's got more of an X frame, even if she's got less muscle than you, she's going to stand out more in the figure division. It's like,
Figure
okay.
especially. I've had that conversation with clients where it's like, just as you said, right? Like from a muscularity standpoint, maybe you're on par
Hmm.
with these girls that are winning, but
Yeah.
I think figure might be the most structure oriented
Yes.
division in the sport, not just for the women, but in the sport because
Hmm.
it's just such that like you said, that wide clavicles, that narrow waist, quads not like out to
Mm.
here, but they have that shape, right? And it just,
Yeah.
I've had clients that I've seen through prep, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're coming together. We got good muscularity. Things are looking
Mm.
good. And then you get in the lineup, and then this one girl who's got a waist like this and
Yeah.
lats and shoulders like this. I'm like, we will never ever beat her, right? Like even if
Yeah.
she's not in her peak condition, even if she's physically a bit smaller muscularity wise,
Mm.
but she's got good bones, and we can't fix that.
Yeah, and it can be a tough pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, we do still have other categories to choose from, and I think you just have to figure out where you're gonna fit best. You might not find that the first time, unless you are built for a category. Like even me, like I say, I'm still trying to figure out where I go. And it's where I sometimes even find when people don't fit in that figure category, they either do focus on bikini or they maybe go to like physique. And I've even seen it where someone has gone from bikini to physique. So they get a bit too muscular for bikini, but they don't have the structure for figure. They go
Yep.
into physique, they do incredibly well. So like Nicola
Yeah.
Cottrell, I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's a
Yep.
great example. And she's done extremely well within the physique division. Incredible muscularity, incredible condition, but she'd never do well in figure because she's like this. She's tiny. So it's just figuring out and understanding where you fit. And sometimes you might trial and error and you just have to figure out where things go. You're not going to necessarily know straight from the get-go. And if you've never competed before, you've never been down in stage lane condition before, you just don't know what you're going to look like. You don't know what you're going to look like next to other people on stage. And the female divisions definitely do take a bit more of just trying things around. But I think the definite thing to kind of tell yourself as a narrative is that one division is not necessarily better than the other. If you love a division and you want to do it because you like it, incredible. If it's not suited for you, you're going to have to understand that maybe when it comes to the competitive outcomes, you're going to be limited a little bit. Like if you love figure, but you're not built for figure, just understand that you could always be beaten by somebody who's got that genetic structure that's beyond you. But yeah, you just kind of have to figure out where is ultimately going to be best for you from a whole host of different reasons.
Mhm. I always try and compare, and I don't know if I'm correct in doing so. You can correct me if I'm wrong. On the men's side of the sport, it's almost like figure is the classic bodybuilding, right? Because there is
Yeah.
a very definitive look that's very silhouette driven. And then now you can agree as well or disagree. I have this conversation, and Leroy and I have debated this, Dan as well. I don't know how many hundred times. A high level classic bodybuilder or a high level figure girl, in my opinion, should be able to go to physique if they can match that conditioning standpoint. But the
Mm-hmm.
same cannot be the said in the opposite, right? A high level
Yeah.
open bodybuilder or a high level physique girl can't necessarily do figure or classic because the shape might not be there, right? And that's where I feel like sometimes, I think in the European championships that we went to, we saw it very clearly where there were some girls that were just absolutely diced and were the perfect physique athlete on the women's side, but they were smaller than the figure girls, right? Because their
Yeah.
structure wasn't that wide, but like you would just inherently think that it's almost like a hierarchy of size where you move up. Like bikini is smaller, figure, a little bit bigger, physique is even bigger, bodybuilding
Mm.
is the biggest, but that's not the case in the natural side of the sport necessarily.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. I'd never actually really thought about that comparison with classic as well, but like you're absolutely right. It's like probably the best of the best in figure could also do very well in the other divisions. And you see it even like at Worlds when some of the girls cross transfer over into different categories too. I think at the end of the day, it's like the best of the best will always prevail. If you have incredible shape and you also have incredible muscularity and condition, you're always going to be able to rise to the top and do very well. But obviously, we don't all have all of those things. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But you just kind of have to understand that that's just part of the sport, and that's kind of how we've been able to set some form of criteria in order to create an actual competition.
Mhm. Yeah. 100%. So looking ahead at the sport, so you're obviously now, with NBW and stuff, you're in like the educational side of things and like you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier with coaching, where do you think things are going for natural bodybuilding, obviously as a whole, but for the women, like, are you seeing more turnout at shows? Because, historically, especially here in Canada, for example, like it's pretty much like bikini plus a couple figure girls at most shows. Like, what is it like for you over there? Like, are you seeing those, figure, physique, women's bodybuilding, especially? Like, are they making an uptick, a resurgence? Like, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing a huge growth,
Good.
especially here in the UK. I mean, even at WNBF Worlds last year, I'd say it was, from a female side of things, one of the best. Also, the year prior in Seattle was absolutely incredible. So I'd like to think that we are seeing a significant growth, particularly in the higher muscularity level side of the sport. But I also think we're seeing a huge growth even in the, I'm just saying, lower level divisions, even in bikini and entry level, like first timers kind of coming through. And that's obviously a huge part of like what we're doing with MBW, but it's a big driver with what I do, even in just my own content. And I now see not just me, but so many other natural females in the sport, doing YouTube, doing podcasts, talking more on Instagram about competing naturally. And that's the one thing that I love about social media. There's many things I don't love about social media, but that is one of the things that I do love, because I think it is opening up a lot more. I still see a lot of content, particularly on TikTok, which is not the best app in the world, and not normalizing taking a lot of assistance as a female, which I think scares me, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But I think, especially on like YouTube and Instagram, I think there's a lot more people that are trying to share that natural side and the opportunities, and that's really, really good. I think that we can only do what we can do to try and put the message out more. But I am seeing more people start to come across. And I really hope that even with things that like we're doing with the MBW International, we kind of try and get more people in the sport. I'll be interested to see how it goes in the next few years, really, with now that, as we discussed offline, with how much the NPC natural side of the sport is starting to grow, particularly in Europe and in the UK and in the US, even they're doing a lot more of those shows, I believe. And I think that could be a really good thing. I think that could be a really good thing to bring more females over, if I'm honest, probably more on the bikini wellness side of things. But I'm seeing more females doing bodybuilding, doing physique, doing figure. In the last few years here in the UK, we've had massive lineups at shows, particularly in bodybuilding. Like we've had some shows where you get, even I remember my first client that I put on stage, she was a women's bodybuilder. And I think there was like 3 people in her class. And that kind of sucks. Fast forward to this past year, I think there were between like 10 to 15 women's bodybuilders in a lot of the
Wow.
classes at shows. And, that's amazing, really,
Yeah, for
because you
sure.
don't get a lot of that. And one thing that I love, and I think that a lot of shows need to do this, is create the opportunity for cross transferring. So being able to do multiple divisions, because a lot of females are actually just quite scared to do some of the higher muscularity divisions because they don't feel ready. And this is a big problem. Like, give you an example. I have a client this year who's going to do physique, and she, when I told her she was going to do physique, she started freaking out. She sent me across a screenshot of what she basically searched was physique competitor. And obviously it comes up with like the Olympia level physique. She's like, I'm not this big. I'm like, no, you're not that big,
Yeah,
but yes,
no.
it's okay. Like you're still on track. Don't worry. Um, but there's obviously, that's a big problem, is that there's such a huge disparity from the assisted side to the natural side, where, most women's bodybuilders on the natural side of the sport, some of them are like in clothes or even just in the bikini, not as big as bikini competitors, like at the top end of the IFBB. So I think it throws a lot of people off, because I think they're worried they're going to basically look like a man. Like that's a
Yeah.
fact. A lot of women in bodybuilding, especially, like, we love muscularity and we see it as a beautiful and a strong thing. But I think some females who naturally have that level of muscularity or have worked incredibly hard to have it, they're scared of going and doing physique or bodybuilding because they think that it will look masculine or look weird. So they'll go and do, just figure in a non-tested show or something like that, even if they do so well in like bodybuilding or something like that. So I'm sorry, I know I've gone off a tangent, but I essentially do think that I've seen more of a growth there. And I think that the more people that share it, like even having people like, like Natalie Hayes, she shares a lot of what she does, and like, incredible like young bodybuilders and physique athletes showing more of their process and showing what's possible as well. Because we also lose a lot of people in the natural side of the sport where they go down like the bikini route, the figure route, and they choose to go down that assisted side of things. They never actually progress to that level of doing physique or bodybuilding. Whereas I think now we're getting a lot of females who are sticking in the sport for 5, 10, 15 years, and we're seeing them go through that. And we've not actually seen, or I've not seen a huge amount of that before, where you've seen so many females start to progress through without potentially deciding to go assisted. Not that that's a problem, because everyone is entitled to their own choice. But like, for example, even Ella, who's part of MBW, she's going from doing figure into doing physique this year. And she's made amazing progress. She looks incredible. And she's showing what's possible, and that's inspiring others. And I hope to like continue to do that with my journey. And I know so many other girls that are continuing to do that now. So I do think it's setting a really good precedent. And I am seeing a lot more females start to head down that route. And I do think that if we continue on this path, hopefully in the next, 5, 10 years, we'll just see more females who have done like so many of the best natural males have done in the sport, and do it for decades and continue to progress. We obviously have some slightly different limitations to males, but I think we'll definitely start to see more of that. And I hope honestly that we do.
Yeah, yeah. It's a time thing too, right? Like now, you and this group of young athletes is getting this wave of momentum where it's like, okay,
Mm.
in the next 5 years, when you can show that progress and that journey and stuff, then that crop of people that are following you and looking up to you are going to be like, oh wow, look what they've done, because for the longest time, there was not that example, right? So people just didn't know. Whereas now that, 23, 24-year
Mm.
old, women's physique competitor, figure competitor now, by the time she's 30 and she's at the top of the game and hitting that really good genetic stride and, 10 years of competing and bodybuilding and stuff, she can be that example of like that older generation of bodybuilders that we've all looked up to that
Mm.
has, been doing this for so long, right? So I think there's going to be a really good shift over the next, 5 to 10 years of like, hey, if you guys commit to this, you can do some pretty cool shit.
Yeah, because there's obviously been so many natural female competitors who have done that and done amazing things. Like Nancy Andrews, Vicky McCann, like so many people who have like been amazing, really ambassadors for the sport. But because we're in this different age now of social
Yeah,
media, it people don't know.
that's right.
Bottom line, people don't know. Like it's like me, and this is why I know, because I've been that 18-year-old girl getting into bodybuilding, and all I know is the top 10 at the Bikini Olympia. Like that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So it's just creating more of that exposure. And like you say, definitely it will hopefully start to pay off and just build more and more momentum.
yeah. I love it. I love it. So what's next for you? Let's talk future goals, plans for you.
So for myself, I think generally my main goals, I'm always kind of focused on the wider impact, especially at the moment with coaching and MBW and everything we're doing there right now. As I believe you guys know, we have the MBW International, the first show in October this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to some time dedicated towards being a coach, being like an ambassador for the sport over the next
Yeah,
couple of years. Because, when you've done a prep, you're kind of sick of thinking about yourself by the end of it.
it's true.
I'm like, I'd love to not think about myself for a period of time. But that's not to say that I'm not still entirely 100% dedicated to my own process as I always am. My goal continues to be to progress to be the best bodybuilder that I can be, and continue to break limits and boundaries that I never thought that could be broken. Like that's my goal every
Mhm.
day. Like every day I go into the gym, I'm like, what can I do better that I never thought I could do before? And over a month, over a year, can I look back and say that I've moved forward? So I'm focused on that goal, but it doesn't have to be for me like everything is me and like this is my tunnel vision. I can do other things as well. And
Yeah,
the nice thing about being in off season is I have a bit more energy to focus on still doing business things and focus on, the wider impact of the sport and things like that too. But I think when it comes to me next getting on stage, that probably won't be until 2027 at the earliest. If I do competing that year, it will be the earlier side of the year, just because with the way that things kind of work in the UK, the latter end of the year is usually quite busy. And
Yeah.
last year when I competed, I also had like 8 to 10 other clients on like the same show as me. And that was very intensive, which actually kind of took away from my process as a coach. You know, like I wanted to be in the crowd and like watch them, and I couldn't because they were on the category before me, and I hated
Yeah,
that. That was
for
very
sure.
annoying. So I might compete at the earlier end of 27, but the thing with being like a female competitor in the sport is that it definitely, it's the same for males, but it does take a good amount of time to recover from a prep, never mind make improvements, you know, and I'm not getting on stage unless I'm definitely better. I
Mhm.
do not know where I'll compete. And as I say, the process for me is I will continue to train how I like to train, which is I want to grow everywhere, as I think most of us do. I want to just grow everywhere. I'm not going to limit myself to a category. And that's a big reason for me why I wouldn't ever really want to focus on like bikini. Not that I don't think I would structurally do well, but because I don't want to limit my training, because I like to train in a specific way.
Yep.
So we'll just see where things land as we go around to there. But immediately my concerns right now are also kind of being present for AJ's prep, which I'm really enjoying. For me, I have goals as a competitor, of course I do, but I think that my wider goals are more so the impact I can have on the sport, and also probably fueling a bit more of AJ's competitive goals, because I think he has more potential than I do. And as a male as well, he has a better ability to probably compete more and longer than I do as well. So I honestly, I just love supporting him. Like that's a really big thing that also kind of like drives me in bodybuilding as well, is I want to see him be his best. And I think I play quite a huge role in that, if I'm being honest. Not in like a I'm taking all of the
Yeah, you
credit for
do.
it, but
You tell him that you do the work, and he
We're going to
just.
hear him in the background disagreeing here
I'll
soon.
take the trophy.
That's right.
No, but I enjoy that. I really do. So like it's been nice for me this year coming away from my prep where, like, for example, on a lot of show weekends and things like that, especially when he's busy as a coach, like I'll do the driving, I'll prep his meals, I'll make sure he eats, I'll do all of these things for him. And when I was competing, I couldn't do that. And I was like, oh, this sucks. Like I just feel useless. I was like, I have nothing to give. So it's nice that I can now kind of reverse that and be there for him. And I'm really looking forward to his season, which obviously kicks off very, very soon. So
Yep.
that's really, really sort of goals. And then we're obviously very focused on the MBW International this year and putting on a show that is from the athletes for the athletes. That's really the goal.
So
And AJ's put an incredible amount of work into that. So I'm very excited to see that become a reality. And, you know, it's the first year this year, but we have a very long-term vision of hopefully creating something that, again, just has a positive impact. That's really
yep.
what we want to deliver.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, finish it up. If people want to follow you, NBW, your podcast, throw it all out there.
Yeah, of course. So, firstly, thank you anyone who's actually listened this far in. Thank you guys for having me on. If anyone wants to follow along my content and my journey ahead, the best place to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram is loz.v. You'll find pretty much all the links on there relating to my coaching, my YouTube, my podcast, which is the Natural Female Muscle Podcast. I talk about a number of different topics relating to natural female bodybuilding and get on as many guests as I can do in the natural female bodybuilding space. So if you want to keep in tune with that, definitely make sure to follow that along. Anyone who is interested in joining the Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide community can do so at naturalbbworldwide.com. We have forums, education, athlete logs, everything on there. And you can obviously keep up to date with all of the information on the MBW International, which will be happening in October this year. So if you're competing later in the year and you fancy doing an international show, of course, if you're from the UK as well, definitely check that out, because as I said, it's a show from the athletes for the athletes that we are really trying to give back to the sport. So if you want an incredible competitive experience where you know that people truly just want you to have the best time, then it's something that I definitely hope you wouldn't regret doing.
That was good. That sounded like a radio ad.
Oh, thanks.
All right, people. If you guys enjoyed this episode with Loz, let us know. Subscribe, like, do all the good stuff. If you want her on for another episode, and if there's certain topics you want to talk about, whether it's health, maybe female hormone health, maybe prep recovery, all that good stuff, let us know, and we can schedule something again. So thank you again, Loz. Thank you guys for
Thank
watching,
you.
and we'll see you guys in the next one.